On April 21st, engineers from Google released a research paper sharing their latest feat, an experiment with a 70-qubit Sycamore quantum processor. The Telegraph recently spotlighted this breakthrough, and it's making waves in the tech community. Here's why. The computation Google pulled off in mere seconds would take over 47 years. Yes, 47 years for today's most powerful supercomputer to achieve. After making headlines in 2019 for claiming quantum supremacy, Google has once again placed quantum computing center stage. So what does this mean for modern cryptography? Could this be the end for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies? We'll dive into that in this video. Before we get deep into quantum computing, let's quickly revisit how our current computers work. These machines can already do a plethora of impressive tasks, but they need a special language to do so. Think of it as a secret code made up of bits. Imagine bits as a computer's foot soldiers and the digital grains of sand. They can hold one of two values that can be either off, 0, or on, 1. These bits work in unison to represent every piece of information a computer understands: numbers, letters, pictures, videos, and even sounds. Visualize bits like Lego bricks, and with these bricks, a computer can reconstruct just about anything it desires. Say you want to give your computer a straightforward command, like open this file. That command gets translated into a series of bits. For instance, the code 0100111 might mean open, and 1001010 could mean this file. The computer knows how to decode these bit sequences to execute specific tasks. The more bits a computer can juggle simultaneously, the more complex tasks it can handle. More bricks means more elaborate structures. Today's computers boast processors that can handle billions of bits at once, enabling them to tackle complex problems, run video games, browse the web, and so much more. That's the present situation for you. However, our conventional computers have their limits in terms of the number of bits they can simultaneously manage. To crack certain intricate calculations, our existing machines would need to grind away for millions of years to find a solution. Enter quantum computing, which can handle specific calculations at breakneck speeds. Instead of using plain bits, quantum computers deploy quantum bits, or qubits. These qubits can represent both 0 and 1, but can also manifest a combination of both 0 and 1. It's this third capability that's a total game changer. Using this state superposition, along with other quantum phenomena like entanglement and quantum interference, these new computers can parallelize calculation processes, enabling them to solve certain specific problems much faster. And here's the kicker. The security foundation of modern cryptography hinges on mathematical calculations that are deemed tough nuts to crack for conventional computers. Let's break it down. Imagine current cryptography as a massive lock with billions of digits in its combinations. Theoretically, you could crack the code by trying every possible combination sequentially, but that would take years, even with the most powerful computers today. This resolution time of mathematical problems is the very bedrock upon which modern cryptography stands. However, in the future, it's conceivable that quantum computers might crack these combinations in a feasible time frame, potentially undermining our current cryptographic standards. And as their name suggests, cryptocurrencies are built upon these cryptographic methods. Take, for instance, the RSA encryption, a widely used asymmetric cryptographic algorithm in e-commerce and for confidential data exchange online. To decrypt a message, you have two routes. 1. Use the private key. It's the quickest way, obviously. Number 2, attempt to solve a complex mathematical puzzle. In the case of RSA encryption, it's about factoring large numbers into prime number product. For those who might have forgotten, a prime number is one that can be divided by 1 and itself. Think of numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. These are prime numbers. Imagine the prime numbers highlighted in red in an image, but remember, they are infinite in number. Alright, let's get back to RSA encryption. If I give my computer a massive number and ask it to break it down into a product of prime numbers, we're talking millions of years. However, at its core, this math problem can be solved. If I hand you the number 21, for instance, and I ask you to factorize it into prime numbers, you likely figure it out quite quickly. In this case, it's 3 times 7, which equals 21. But what if I throw a 617-digit number your way? That's a whole different ballpark, right? That's the essence of RSA encryption. If you have the private key to decrypt the code, you're golden. But without it, good luck cracking that. The size of cryptographic keys is crucial here. With a robust algorithm like RSA, as we increase the size of the keys in use, the encryption becomes far more secure. So, if 512-bit RSA keys no longer cut it security-wise, we jump to 1024-bit keys. When those fall short, we move to 2048-bit keys, and so on and so forth. This strategy ensures cryptography remains secure as computers advance over time. We can actually gauge this enhanced security in cryptographic algorithms based on key size. In the tech world, we refer to this as algorithmic complexity, and we use the big O notation to describe it. With this chart chart illustrates with the key size n on the x-axis, representing the combination length of the lock, is the time it would take to break the algorithm. Current top-tier computers sit in this white zone, so as you increase the length of the lock combination, the challenge of cracking the code skyrockets exponentially. Once we've grasped all of the above, the quantum conundrum becomes apparent. Remember my intro? I explained that the allure of quantum computers is their ability to parallelize calculations. This implies they could drastically slash the number of operations needed to tackle the mathematical puzzles underpinning cryptography. In fact, there are already several algorithms specifically designed to turbocharge these calculations on quantum computers. The twin titans threatening cryptography are Shor's and Grover's quantum algorithms, conceived in '94 and '96 respectively. So this isn't some newfound concern. Shor's targets asymmetric cryptography, while Grover proves adept at hash functions and symmetric encryption methods. Let's hone in on Shor's algorithm, as it's the one that could truly pose challenges for us in the future. It's designed to factorize integers into prime numbers in polynomial time. What this means is that the computational time required to carry out the task we were discussing earlier increases reasonably with the size of the number being factorized. Put simply, you don't gain much by beefing up the size of the lock when up against a quantum computer. For a given key size, Shor's quantum algorithm will be able to solve the calculation and hence break the encryption much faster than a conventional computer. For instance, if you aim to crack a 2048-bit RSA private key using a classic computer, it would demand you to attempt a quadrillion times quadrillion calculations. Essentially, it's a no-go. However, if you have a quantum computer on hand, Shor's algorithm could break that same key in just 6 billion operations. While that's still a large number, it would feasibly be done in a matter of hours or days. Thankfully, even though Shor's quantum algorithm does exist and works in theory, we're a long way off from executing it on a quantum computer. Yes, quantum computers already exist, and you can give some of them a whirl for free in the cloud, but they're far too limited to run Shor's algorithm successfully. Several reasons account for this. We need a quantum computer with a vast number of qubits, and that's not available yet. For calculations as intricate as Shor's algorithm, qubits must maintain their quantum state long enough. Currently, their performance is too unstable. Data would be lost before completing all necessary operations. In essence, while the quantum computer concept is certainly functional, it remains highly experimental for now. A quantum computer operates on a closed circuit with zero traffic. Place it in the Paris region or New York, and it's utterly lost. For the short term to medium term, there doesn't seem to be a threat to cryptography or to Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. This sentiment aligns with expert opinions, as evidenced by a 2022 survey by Evolution Q, which polled 40 industry professionals. In this study, they asked about the likelihood of a quantum computer being able to crack a 2,400-bit RSA private key within 24 hours. I won't dive deep into the survey details right now. You can hit pause and explore the graph on your own if you'd like. But the takeaway here is that for the short and medium term, there doesn't seem to be a threat to cryptography. However, thinking long-term, there's some genuine cause for concern. What are the quantum computing risks for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? Now that we've outlined the challenges quantum computing might pose for cryptography, it's time to explore if Bitcoin and other cryptos face the same risks. So when we talk about Bitcoin, it primarily relies on two cryptographic methods, hashing functions and digital signatures. As for the hashing functions mainly used in mining, like SHA-256 for Bitcoin or previously KEKAK-256 for Ethereum, there doesn't seem to be any immediate danger. From what we currently know, these hashing functions won't be significantly impacted, if at all, by quantum computing. I won't get into the nitty-gritty now. That would take us another half an hour, and you'll have to take my word for it. Still, I'd encourage you to do some digging yourself. You might want to start with these two articles I'll link in the video description. And yes, you're seeing that right, an article by Vitalik Buterin in Bitcoin magazine. Aha, 2013. Those were the days. So, we've established that hashing functions aren't in immediate danger. Even though Bitcoin doesn't use the RSA algorithm we mentioned earlier, Satoshi Nakamoto's invention does use two other encryption algorithms that might be threatened by quantum computing, ECDSA and Schnorr. If we could effectively run the Schnorr algorithm, it'd be possible to compute a private key from a public one. And that's a big deal, because as you know, if you have the private key, you control the crypto. Of course, there's still the matter of someone with a quantum computer getting their hands on a user's public key. While the early adopters or the OGs of Bitcoin once used raw public keys on the network, that's less common now. Nowadays, when you receive Bitcoin, you're most likely using a receiving address, which is derived by hashing your public key. And remember, hashing functions, as of now, aren't expected to be cracked by a quantum computer. This implies that, initially, only the Bitcoin whose public keys have been published on the blockchain could be at risk of theft. That's why in 2019, cryptographer Peter Wheeler estimated that 37% of Bitcoin units in circulation were vulnerable. By his calculations, around 6 million Bitcoin could potentially be stolen with a powerful enough quantum computer. Notably, among these 6 million, there are the presumed 1 million Bitcoin owned by Satoshi Nakamoto, all secured with known public keys. But beyond this estimation, depending on Shore's practical efficiency, it might also be possible to front-run or jump ahead of pending transactions in the mempool. Let me explain here. Even if your users are receiving addressed, and take care not to reuse addresses, when you decide to spend your Bitcoin, you'll need to reveal your public key in the spending script. The challenge is that there's a time gap between when you broadcast your transaction to the network nodes and when it's included in a block. With a potent enough quantum computer, someone could monitor the mempool, grab a pending transaction, compute its private key using Shore, and then double spend the transaction, offering a higher fee to get minor priority. What you need to grasp is that on Bitcoin, certain coins will be at risk faster than others, but regardless of what happens, all Bitcoin will be at risk when spent. It's the revelation of the public key that brings the threat. So yes, quantum computers do pose a definite risk to Bitcoin and crypto. But is it truly an urgent problem? In my view, no. As mentioned earlier, it's crucial to understand that quantum computers capable of running algorithms like Shore's while maintaining a low error rate and retaining information long enough are still a long way off. Even if we see advancements here and there, it's mostly speculative. We aren't even sure it's physically feasible to create such quantum computers. Moreover, the Shore algorithm hasn't been tested in a real-world scenario yet. It's theoretical, and we can't predict its practical performance. This gives us some time to develop cryptographic methods to address this emerging challenge of a specific cryptographic domain called post-quantum cryptography. Back in 2016, the NIST, an agency responsible for tech standards in the US, called for proposals of cryptographic algorithms resistant to quantum attacks. Various post-quantum approaches already exist, especially for the digital signature algorithms we'll need for our crypto. However, current post-quantum cryptographic methods have their own risks and downsides, particularly because they are new and haven't been extensively tested. Compared to the Sycamore protocols, or ECDSA, introduced in 1991 and 1992 respectively, post-quantum algorithms haven't stood the test of time. Furthermore, they require the use of much larger cryptographic keys than traditional algorithms, which complicates their practical implementation. So it's absolutely not wise to implement a post-quantum electronic signature system in Bitcoin at this specific point. Doing so would significantly increase the workload for network nodes and greatly amplify the vulnerability risks. All this to address a problem which, according to experts, remains far off and largely speculative. To wrap up, no, quantum computers are not going to kill Bitcoin. On one hand, their application at this scale remains highly speculative. On the other, even if they do become a reality someday, we can simply switch to a different algorithm for electronic signatures. At worst, they might enable the theft of Satoshi Nakamoto's funds and those of a few users who lost their keys, causing a significant dip in Bitcoin's value. But there will always be a new block every 10 minutes, and that's what truly matters. Furthermore, it's vital to understand that these quantum computing threats aren't limited just to Bitcoin and crypto. In today's digital age, cryptography is everywhere. If asymmetric cryptographic systems are broken, numerous protocols would be impacted, including HTTPS, TLS, SSH, and so on and so forth. The entire banking system would be at risk, as well as medical data, military communications, air traffic control, and security for critical infrastructure like hydroelectric dams and nuclear power plants. Therefore, if this quantum computing menace proves to be real in the future, developing appropriate post-quantum cryptographic solutions won't just be necessary for Bitcoin and crypto, but for all of humanity.